Warning: the following podcast, which contains strong language and mature content, is unsuitable for children or for the faint of heart. The subject matter discussed will be frightening and graphic in nature. Listener discretion is advised.
Three spooked girls. Three spooked girls. When you want to hear about the paranormal, you get the spooked girls. True crime that makes you hypothermal. With the three spooked girls. Stabby snippets will give you dreams. Tara and Jessica will make you scream along with the spooked girls. Bring on the slaughter. We on that haunted ground. Spooked girls. The three spooked girls.
Hey Spooksters, and welcome back to another episode here on Three Spooked Girls. My name is Tara, and as always, I'm here with my ghoul friend Jessica.
Hello.
Hello. And today we are starting our recap of a new documentary that Jessica and I were both very excited about. It is called Kidnapped, Elizabeth Smart. Surprisingly, we have never covered this case. I had a fever dream and thought we had, but then when this came up, I went and looked and we definitely have not. So here we are.
Well, we've done so many that it's like, after a while, you're just like, who haven't we done or what haven't we done?
Right. And I feel like we've probably talked about this offline. She's had a couple books come out in recent years, so I'm sure you and I have discussed this, but we haven't discussed this with everybody. So that's what we're going to do today. But if you are new here, hello, welcome. Thank you for checking out the show. Returning Spooksters, welcome back. If you are not hanging out with us on social media, you can find us on all the places. Our handle is at Three Spooked Girls. We also have our amazing Facebook group that is Three Spooked Girls Official. We do episode threads. There's memes. There's all kinds of funny stuff. There's spooky stuff. There's cases. All the things hang out over there, and we love it. And literally the only reason I have Facebook at this point. If you want to hang out with Spooksters online in that kind of capacity, definitely check it out. And everything we mention in our intros is in the show notes. We do have a link tree where everything revolving us and our second show, everything lives there. And speaking of which, if you are a reader, we do have a virtual book club. We meet once a month on our Discord. It is almost February, so we just had the wrap up of January's book, but we will be announcing our February book, which will be a feminine rage read. I am so excited for it. We will announce that on the 1st, so definitely keep your eyes out for that. And if you would like to support the show, you can go to patreon.com/Three Spooked Girls. For as little as $1, you get one bonus episode a month. This month will be another of Jess's Real or Not Real State Laws. They are hilarious and weird and great. So if you need some laughs, you can join us over there. And if you would like ad-free episodes the day before, you can join us starting at our $5 tier. And we also have a lot of exclusive content that is available to those tiers as well. And in case you missed it, I mentioned we do have a second show over on Social Seance Society. We are in the depths of our deep dive on the Hunger Games universe. Catching Fire just came out yesterday, and we are working our way through. It's a lot of fun. It's a lot more conversational than it is here. So if you want more of us, if you want a distraction, or if you've been debating on rereading the Hunger Games, or you are rereading the Hunger Games, it's a good companion piece, if I do say so myself. It's just been a lot of fun, and I'm really looking forward to as we continue on, because not only are we doing the original trilogy, but we're going to do the two newer books that have came out, and I have never read either of them. Have you read one of them, or have you not read either of them?
I have not read either of them. I have watched the movie of A Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, but I have not read it, and I am itching to get through because we're currently in the middle of reading Mockingjay, and I'm like, I need to get this over with so that I can just read
yes.
the next book book.
Oh my God.
I've heard great things though.
Same. I've heard good things about both of them. So in the movie for the last book that she's released comes out at the end of this year. And I am so freaking excited. That cast looks amazing. And I can't get over Glenn Close being in that movie either. I love it. So I'm ready. But that's not till November for that movie. But we will be discussing the book. So definitely check it out. Wherever you're listening to us right now, Social Science Society is available in the same app. So definitely check it out. But that is really all I have. So we're going to get into this. Now, this is going to be 2 parts. This was a one-off documentary. It is on Netflix. It's a little over an hour and a half long, but it is so jam-packed with details and information that when I did my notes and when Jess did her notes, we were like, this has got to be 2 parts. So the next 2 weeks, we will be going over this. So in true doc form, we're going to open up with our text on the screen because why not? It's a true crime doc. You can't. The text reads, in 2002, 14-year-old Elizabeth Smart was abducted from her bedroom as she slept. The only witness was her 9-year-old sister, Mary Catherine. Which I'm just going to spoil us already. I mean, it's not really a spoiler. This case is over 20 years old. MK, as I put her in my notes, MK is the MVP of this case and the hero of this story, in my humble opinion. Just saying.
I love that we both put in our notes, we just referred to her as MK, because that's what I did too.
It was just easier.
I was like, I'm not writing Mary Catherine every time I got to talk about her.
No, I definitely did it like the next little part, but after that, I definitely just switched to MK. So after we see that, we get this audio clip of someone asking MK, if Elizabeth was listening right now, Mary Catherine, what would you say to her? And keep in mind, Mary Catherine is 9 years old when this has happened. She says that I miss her and I want her to know that our whole family loves her. I wonder why somebody would want to kidnap Elizabeth. I'm just like, I just want to hug her so bad. I don't want to hug her as an adult. I just want to hug her so bad.
Right.
So we cut to MK as an adult when they filmed this. This is our kind of like our intro, and she's recounting missing her sister, that they were best friends, and producers asked her how she dealt with it, and she said it's still something she deals with today, which is understandable. And I think her saying that, it just kind of hit a point with me. I think a lot of times when we consume either a case where the victim is found, no, that's not really a spoiler. We all know Elizabeth Smart, thankfully, was rescued. We never really think about the aftermath, or it's not really talked about, I guess I should say, in the fact that, yes, this is over. Yes, she came home 20-something years ago, but this is stuff that every single person involved with this case, family or not, is going to have to deal with that trauma and those memories for the rest of their lives.
Exactly.
I think they do a really great job highlighting that in this documentary. So, the night of the kidnapping. So, June 5th, 2002. MK says that this night was like any other, that her and Elizabeth said their prayers together before bed and went to sleep. And the next thing she remembers was seeing a man in their room telling Elizabeth if she screamed, he would kill her. She said, understandably so, she was paralyzed with fear and in shock and had her eyes closed, pretending to be asleep, and just listened to her sister being taken away. She said that she finally worked up the courage to get out of bed and immediately went and told her parents that Elizabeth was gone. And this, understandably so, made national news immediately, considering a 13-year-old was stolen straight from her bed, because as we all know, that is a rarity with kidnappings. It's not common for the perpetrator to break into the victim's home and grab them out of bed.
Right.
Then we get Ed Smart, who is Elizabeth's and MK's dad. And he's talking about how, as a father, he wanted to protect his children, but this time he couldn't. And that this is what was repeating in his mind over and over and over as we go through these months of hell. For our timeline, it was 3:58 a.m. when MK went into the parents' room. And Ed said he thought MK had a nightmare, but as they began to search for Elizabeth through the house, panic began to set in. Once they got into the kitchen, even more panic set in because they noticed that, one, not only was a window open in the kitchen, just wide open, the screen on the window was also cut. So Lois, aka Mrs. Smart, she saw this, she clocked this too, and immediately screamed that they needed to call 911. Now, we meet a police captain, and like we always say, like, we love these guys, so hopefully he never turned problematic. So if he did, please don't use that against us.
Right.
But in this documentary, very much respect this man. His name is Corey Lyman. I'll refer to him as first name basis, as we usually do in this. And he heard the call come through the radio that there had been a kidnapping. And he also talks about how rare it is that a child is taken from their bedroom. So he knew the urgency of needing to get down to their house immediately. And they were in a suburb of Salt Lake City called Federal Heights. Now, at this time, Elizabeth was just a regular 14-year-old girl. She was involved with music. She was involved with her church because, of course, Salt Lake City, Mormon town. We know that. Mm-hmm. Corey says when they started to process the crime scene, they found the cut screen, the window open, and on the outside of the house where the window was, they found a chair propped against the wall as if somebody used it to climb in. He said his initial reaction was that they'd have answers within 48 hours. And he admits on camera, he's like, but I was wrong. And I'm like, oh, yes, you were, Corey. Mm-hmm. You were completely wrong. We do get a reporter named Nesia Deggering. She was literally one of the first ones on the scene reporting on this. And she says that she remembers the shock she was feeling as she was saying the words out loud when she was reporting on this, that it just did not feel real. And for those of us not in Utah or in Salt Lake, she let us know that Federal Heights is one of the more ritzy areas of Salt Lake City. And as the camera pans, you see these gorgeous giant homes. It's kind of like a tale as old as time. It's in these safe neighborhoods where you never think something like this would happen. And it kind of reminds me of like going back to the Ruby Frankie situation. All of the neighbors knew each other. All of the neighbors went to the same church, everything like that. And she even admits that she was very skeptical if this was an actual kidnapping.
By the way, this woman looks younger in the documentary than she does 23 years ago.
Oh my God. Aged backwards. Yes. Love that for her.
I was like, vampire. Like, 'cause she looks fantastic.
I know.
I was like, okay, girl, drop the skincare routine. I know this is a true crime documentary, but I literally was just like, how do I age like you? Mm-hmm. I need to know.
Right. I know. Also, in this, we do meet more of the Smart family throughout it. The first person we meet is Dave. This is one of Ed's brothers. And he recounts that Ed called him to come over for help. And he said he was there immediately. When he got there, the scene and the state of his brother and sister-in-law were what you would expect. He said his brother looked like he had been through the meat grinder. And Lois was in the living room surrounded by friends and family, and he described hearing a, quote, blood-curdling scream of her saying, "Where is my daughter?" I can't even imagine the terror and the stress and the fear, like everything that this family went through for so long. Mm-hmm. They did, thankfully, act very quickly on this. 8 hours since she disappeared, they had set up a tip line at the police station. They had a whole room dedicated to it and everything. And very quickly, they got about 40,000 tips and leads, and they had a team set up of 100 investigators to cover this.
That's crazy.
Insane, but like in a great way, obviously. Then we meet Detective Corden Parks, who we see quite a bit. And I laughed at his little intro because he's like sitting down. He's, of course, this older dude now. He's like sitting down and he says, "Oh, well, no matter how much lipstick you put on this pig, I'm not going to look any better." And they're just like, you could hear the producers like laughing and stuff.
Well, I'm glad that he has that read of himself, because looking back at it, he knows that he made some fundamental errors of judgment and just like the way he acted, which I think is great, that he's like, hey, I done fucked up.
Yeah, I will say the law enforcement that we do hear from, most, if not all, do take accountability for how this case is handled. We'll get into it later, but like a lot of them still hold guilt for that. And I'm just like, not to be shitty, but like, yeah, you should.
Right.
Just saying. So he talks about right out the gate, he goes to Elizabeth's school and they're talking with her friends. They find out she doesn't have any boyfriends. She's a good kid. She's not involved with like drugs or anything. The party scene, nothing like that. So they find nothing that would lead them to think that she had ran away. And literally everyone in town knew who she was. Like I said, she was very involved in music and very involved in her church. So neighbors and the community all came out to start help looking for her and putting up posters and doing the whole thing. And little extra background, the Smarts had lived at this house for about 8 years at this point, and they had a total of 6 children. So besides Elizabeth and MK, they also had 4 sons. And Elizabeth was the first daughter, the older daughter, and her dad describes her as fiercely competitive with her brothers, which I love that, and says she's a very strong spirit, which is very, very evident with how she navigated her imprisonment, I would say. So by day 2, they have national coverage all over the media, all the major networks like ABC, Fox, everybody. They literally had nothing to go on besides the witness account from 9-year-old MK. Literally it. She reflects that, obviously being so young, she didn't really understand what was going on besides the fact that her sister was gone and she was scared. And she talks about how the two of them did everything together and that they actually got along really well, even with their age difference. And the biggest fight they would have is that she said Elizabeth would get on her for being messy. And I was just like, oh, that's such an older sister thing.
That's true. In a way, it's like, I remember when I was watching this part and she was like, I didn't really understand. I'm like, that's kind of like a blessing in disguise because it's like, you're not really comprehending what's happening. You know, as an adult, our minds would start racing with every possibility. She could be dead. She could be in the situation that she was in. It could be worse, as in like, who knows? Like she could be chained in a basement, being beaten. But as a 9-year-old, like all you really do know is that your sister is gone. And that's kind of like, I was like, oh, I'm really glad that she didn't like fully comprehend what was happening.
Yeah, I agree. And while they did do a lot of things wrong, I will say authorities did do this right. They knew how important the way they navigated interviewing MK was going to be pivotal on them getting whatever little information they could. So they did take the time to make sure she was in a controlled and safe environment and had the right kind of person interviewing her and all of that. And we do see footage of interviews and interrogations during this documentary. And the first footage we see is little MK telling the person she's talking to what the kidnapper had said. And she said, quote, "If you scream, I'll shoot you. But if you don't, I won't harm you." And she said that his voice, because the kidnapper was a male, did sound familiar, but she couldn't place where she had heard that voice before. And the authorities, they acknowledged that the Smart family, again, that same story we always hear, I feel like, they seemed perfect, normal, happy, you know, all of this time. But they knew too, obviously, that there's a chance this isn't the case. There's a lot of times that this isn't actually the case. So with that and what MK had said, they started looking into the Smart family hard. I will go ahead and say definite tunnel vision.
Oh, for sure.
That bites them in the ass. So they said that during interviews, there were a few red flags for them. One was being that the alarm was turned off that night and also the window. And the window was setting off alarm bells, not because of like the screen or the window itself necessarily. It was more because with that chair that was propped outside, there was no scuff marks as if someone was climbing up. But my immediate argument was like, well, then that tells me this person was tall enough they didn't have to brace themselves on the wall. They could just like throw their leg over to get into the window, like step in.
Or my first thought was maybe they weren't wearing shoes. They were maybe just like in their socks because like you're going to have to walk through a house. Like you might not want to have a shoe on.
Right.
That's where my mind went with it because I was like, I could see that.
Yeah, totally. They did not take it that way. They took this as, okay, was this staged? Okay, fair enough, because you got to explore all options. So they did do a search on the house and the property. They brought in a cadaver dog. His name was JJ. I don't know if it was Corey or the other guy, but like one of them let us know that basically, of course, the dog picked up the scent in the house and then the dog took them out to the back through this trail and then it just abruptly stopped. Like he just quit alerting while on the trail. So their initial thought was, oh, she must have been taken in a car. So unfortunately, this brought a lot of scrutiny to this family. People would make all kinds of statements. Like, Jess, you mentioned this off recording. This is also the same time as the Lacey Peterson case.
Yeah.
So court of public opinion is coming in hot.
Right.
And they are picking apart every single thing, every single mannerism of this family. And it was just like the dumbest little things. And then being like, oh, Ed's upset, but he's not actually crying tears and da-da-da-da-da. That means he's guilty. Like all of this crazy shit immediately for this poor family.
When they were talking about like Ed not being able able to like have tears, I was thinking like, this is a man who's like trying to keep his shit together because he like his little girl is out there. He has no clue where she is. And you can clearly see that he gets to this place. Like if you watch him, he gets to this place of like about to break. And then it's just like almost like he has to stop and like pull himself back.
Yeah.
And I think it's because he knows that if he's, I mean, here's the thing. If you get on camera and you start crying and there's tears, there's no shame in that. That's beautiful and wonderful. That's your reaction. But I can't speak, but my hypothesis of why he was acting this way is he was trying to seem cool and collected so that it would give strength to like people out there looking. You know, like if Elizabeth saw it, she could see that her dad was like holding it together to find her. And I don't know. I just like, I really hate when people are like, well, they're not emoting the way that I want them to emote, so they're guilty.
I know, because I'm like, one, how do you know? Because you've never been in this situation, and you should hope you're never in this situation. And two, every single human is different. So like, calm down. But like all of that talk got to the Smart family because we know polygraphs are basically useless. But like they had them do polygraphs, and because of how much stress and sadness and being scared and all of those emotions that this family is under, some of them came back kind of inconclusive, which obviously people are automatically like, oh, that means they're guilty. And it's like, no, it doesn't.
Because a polygraph is a stress test.
Right.
If you're worried about your daughter, your niece, your cousin, whoever is missing, you're super stressed.
For sure. It got so bad that Lois told Ed one day that law enforcement didn't believe him. And he said that he was so overwhelmed that he was literally just shaking and couldn't stop shaking. And it got so bad that his dad had told him, if you don't stop or you can't calm down, I'm going to have you committed. And he did end up getting committed. And Ed said that he just cried all night. And he said he was just so helpless. And it's like, I can't even imagine how he felt, because it's like, you know, you're innocent. You know, you're the one fighting to look for your child, but you have the world questioning you and accusing you of awful things.
And there's like the fear that would come with being 5150'd at like a time when you want to be out looking for your child probably didn't help him calm down. And I mean, it's kind of like when someone tells someone who's really upset to calm down, it
makes it worse.
Triggers something inside of you that you're like, I can't calm down. And I can just see this dad standing there. I can't calm down because my child that I love so much is not here. You expect me to calm. And it was probably like a really good thing that he got into a place where he had some mental health help, where there were people there who were like gonna help him. And then it probably reset him, which I'm like, wow, that was a bold move of the family, because that could also make him look really guilty if they were like, oh, we had him committed. You talked about like Lacey Peterson. This is like in the height of like crime correspondents picking apart actions. And I can just hear someone being like, well, he was committed. So like, does that mean he's guilty? Because like he cracked after he killed his daughter. I mean, I could just hear that on the news.
Oh, totally. So by day 6, because so much is happening so quickly, by day 6, we get a clip of Lois on camera, and she's saying, scrutinize whoever, scrutinize anyone, look into everyone so we can find information. Do it. We don't care. We are completely open. We just want our daughter back. And like I mentioned, Ed has 3 brothers, and all of them were also given polygraphs. And poor Tom. His brother Tom was also given one and failed. And again, same thing with Ed, you know, that doesn't mean shit. And in my opinion, Tom's just weird, and he's obviously not media trained. He's a normal person. So of course he came off really weird.
Yeah.
They show this clip of an interview, and he is not making any sense. And again, it's like, you have to think about it. It's his niece. It's his family. He says later on, you know, we weren't sleeping at all of this stuff. And by this point, I think he had said it was like they hadn't slept in like, this is day 6 when they're talking about this. They hadn't slept in like 5.5 days is what he said.
Right.
So he's just babbling at this point. And I wrote down some of his quotes because, yeah. But he says, everyone makes mistakes. I think the person who took her likes her. Everyone has issues. You know, we understand that. We just want her back. This is a wonderful story in a lot of ways because it's about foremost a beautiful little angelic girl. And he's like going off and off. And you can hear someone being like, Tom, like, stop talking. Because I understand it's coming off as weird, but it's like, because we know the mindset and obviously we know what happens, it's like, he's just trying to be like, look, this can still be a good story. She comes home safe.
Right.
She makes it. No one has to die. I think that's what he was trying to say, but obviously he's not saying that coherently.
No.
So people are like, what the fuck?
And this is also like, they haven't slept at this point. He's taken a polygraph test with no sleep, which typically they don't administer them if you haven't gotten a good night's sleep. Like, you have to have certain conditions. I think a lot of times we hear like press trainings for these type of kidnappings where they're like, appeal to the kidnapper. And I think that's what he was doing too. I think he was like, look, we understand you made a mistake. You're still a good person. Just bring her back. It's all going to work out. And I think that's what he was doing. But you probably think about the fact that he has no sleep. He's Mormon, so he's not drinking caffeine, because this is during the time of like no caffeine in the Mormon church. So he's running on pure adrenaline. And so I'm surprised we didn't hear weirder things come out of his mouth, because he is an odd duck. I think he just says weird shit.
Yeah, I agree.
And unfortunately, he did it on national television.
Yeah, and he talks about all this too. And he's like, yeah, even my wife right after that turned to me and said, you fucked the family. You literally fucked us, how you said that. And again, it's just like, none of them are in their right minds and they're under so much stress. It's kind of like, damn, like, I get it. We got to figure out who did this, obviously. But it's like, give the man a fucking break. Like, Jesus.
Right.
Thankfully, though, the family was cleared with their alibis. And for some reason, they took 12 computers from the Smart family home, which I'm like, man, in 2002, you all have 12 computers? I get there's like a million of you living in this house, but that's like 2 computers a person. Jesus.
I know. I was like, do they all have their own desktop?
I don't know what Ed used to do. And laptop, like...
Right, that's what I was thinking. Because there's like 2 parents and 6 kids.
Oh, yeah, so technically there's 8 of them. But still...
And I'm assuming that he probably had like business computers at his house.
Yeah, I would assume so. And see, my other question was too, I was like, wait, is this actually just from their house or is this from like collectively? That was what I was also wondering.
I was hoping that it was collectively, because it could make sense, because again, this is a big family.
Right.
And they could, but also it makes sense to pull this kind of stuff because this is the beginning of the internet where like we have chat rooms and things like that. We don't know. I mean, this was kind of like during that cautionary tale is like, don't talk to people you don't know online. And what if Elizabeth had been? And this person came and kidnapped her?
Right, for sure. There's so many possibilities at this point and they just don't know. Unfortunately, even though they were cleared, Ed said that as soon as the fingers started being pointed at the Smart family, all of these volunteers just started dropping like flies. And so pretty much it came down to the Smart family. They were the ones that everything was on their shoulders if they were going to make anything happen.
And it didn't really seem like the police like were like, the family has been cleared. Like they were pointing fingers and then it was just like the accusation stopped, but it didn't really seem like they had like announced that they were no longer suspects.
No. Then Corey lets us know that there were remains found by I-80 of a female victim. And I am like, oh my fucking God. I get it. We've seen this because we saw it like with Casey Anthony, like, you know, cases like that where it's like they do give the family a heads up. Hey, we found some remains. We're not saying it's so-and-so, but just a heads up to brace yourselves in case it is. And with this one, the body had been burnt beyond recognition, but they were able to determine that this was not Elizabeth. This was sadly a different victim. And Corey describes Ed and Lois as extremely strong people. He said while he was on this case, he spoke to them every day and that he and his family had their own loss. So he had 2 lenses as far as a point of view and understanding. He had it from obviously his professional background, but then also kind of in their shoes as well, is what he was alluding to.
Which I think is what helped with the Smart family. Like once they were cleared, I think Corey really was like, I understand. Like we don't know what Corey's loss is, but like he had some sort of like, he's like, I can completely sympathize with them and what they're going through. So they're not acting weird.
So now we go to day 9. And of course, police does not want MK to talk to anyone because of course this could influence her memory being she's so young. I mean, even if you're an adult, stuff like that can influence your memory, right? She said that she felt like she was on her own lonely island, basically, that she would try to sneak around and hear information. But of course, all of the adults were trying to shield her from it. But her being a 9-year-old girl, not, you know, being able to think like that, she thought people were just just shutting her out. So she just felt very, very alone. And she said during this whole time, she was interviewed so many times, and she was even hypnotized one time to try to unlock more memories of what had happened that night. And she said she just felt so much pressure on her because, you know, at the end of the day, she's just a little 9-year-old. She's in like, what, 4th grade, 5th grade, like super young.
Right. It was like this heartbreaking moment where she like walks outside her house because obviously she's like can't go anywhere and do anything. And she like ties that ribbon to the rail.
Mm-hmm.
And I was just like, oh, that's so heartbreaking.
I know.
You can just tell that she wants to help, but she's 9. What could she have done?
Yeah, it's awful. So now that the Smart family was cleared, authorities had everyone in the family create a list of literally any and everyone who could have been in and out of the house recently or in their sphere, including contractors, because the Smart family was having renovations and other stuff done during the spring and whatnot. And there was a man who came up named Richard Ricci. It was said that he and Ed had a conflict over wages. And so they were like, okay, this guy's a problem. So they do a search warrant on his house and found some of Lois's jewelry that he had stolen. So they're like, all right, let's take him in for questioning. And we get footage of that. And he's not a good person, so I am not defending him whatsoever. He is a piece of shit in his own right. Just gonna disclaim that. But in this, he's understandably pissed. He's like, I didn't fucking touch her. I didn't take her. I had nothing to do with this. And they were going hard. They were going hard on this guy. The interrogator literally says, quote, when was the last time you were in that fucking house? And he's very like short answered or tried to play dumb with even basic info. And he literally just says April. And that was when he had been working there. The interrogator does ask him about the kidnapping, and he just keeps saying, I don't know anything about that. I don't know anything at all. You know, like, AKA, I didn't have anything to do with that. And the interrogator's like, there's no way you live in this valley and you haven't seen this on the news. You know the basics. What did you see on the news? And then so he's like, okay, I saw on the news that someone had kidnapped her from her house. That's all I know. Like, you know, very short, whatever. And when they're looking into him, they find out he was a felon. And the reason for that was he had shot a responding officer in a pharmacy robbery that he was committing. And Ed says that he had no idea that this guy was a felon, that in fact, he was recommended from the church's employment center. Color me not shocked. No one shocked. And Ed had even given him a Jeep to use because he was working for him. And so they looked into that. And then they realized that there was several hundred miles added on during that time of when she was kidnapped. But he could not and would not explain why he had all those miles on and what he had been doing. So they were like, okay, well, does this mean he took Elizabeth somewhere? Did he dump her body? You know, whatever. Because on top of that, there was also an eyewitness that said they saw him pulling out, quote, digging tools out of the Jeep. So they're like, okay, none of this is looking good for you. And they said at that point, they were 99.9% sure that it was him. But MK saw his photo on the news one day, and she said she knew it wasn't him. And so, of course, the Smart family tells law enforcement that, and they don't believe her. They're like, well, she was groggy. Well, she kept her eyes shut most of the time. You know, she was scared herself, like all of this stuff. So the family's like, okay, well, she's the only witness, so like maybe you should listen to her. And they're like, no. So then law enforcement's basically like, bro, either confess or tell us what you were doing to clear yourself so we can move the fuck on. Now, jump ahead. We are now 7 weeks after Elizabeth has been kidnapped. So we're now at July 24th. And wouldn't you know, someone tries to break into Elizabeth's aunt and uncle's house with the same method of cutting the window screen. And the room the intruder was trying to get into was her 18-year-old cousin, who's a girl. So they're like, this is obviously connected. Who the fuck is targeting our family? Why is this person targeting our family? Like, hello, do something, law enforcement, please.
And that was so telling for me because I was like, how are you not looking outside of this family if it's been like a second child? Like, there's not going to be someone in the family when they're scrutinizing them so closely being like, I'm going to kidnap another niece. Doesn't make any sense.
No, not at all. And on top of that, when Corey went to the scene, he mentioned seeing 2 chairs by the window, and they were positioned the same way the singular chair was at the window at Elizabeth's house. And he was like, obviously, there's two ways we can go with this. Either it is the same person and they're trying to get another kid, or this is some sick joke and some copycat. But the thing with the copycat theory that gets it thrown out immediately is that it wasn't public knowledge about the chair at this point. So he's like, okay, whoever did this has to be involved. Has to either be the person that took Elizabeth or knows the person that took Elizabeth, because the general public did not know about the chair. Then they're like, well, fuck. And this is where I'm like, how are we so stupid? Because guess what? Richard Ricci is still in jail at this point. He physically could not have done it.
Right.
But they were so gung-ho. They were so like, it's Richard. And it's like, well, that wasn't Richard. So what the fuck?
Which is why they were like heavily leaning on the whole, even though they were like, it can't be a copycat because we haven't released this bit of information to the public. It's a copycat. And I'm like, I don't understand. Like, if you haven't told people about it. And I think the only thing they can go off of is the fact that they thought like maybe he had an accomplice, or maybe he's told someone about it. And so now they're going to do this. Like, they weren't going to kidnap the cousin, like really kidnap the cousin. They were just doing this to like throw them off Richard. But I'm like, Richard doesn't seem that like, he didn't seem like he was that kind of a sophisticated criminal.
And another thing that law enforcement was just like so hung up on, Corey was telling us how it was just so baffling that Richard wouldn't clear himself, would not budge, even after they told him, look, we don't give a shit what you've done. As long as it's not homicide or kidnapping, you know, with Elizabeth, like, we really don't fucking care. And he was just like, nope, not gonna do it. So then on top of that, then Corey gets a call that Richard has collapsed in his cell and it's not looking good. It was so bad that he ended up dying. He died of an aneurysm is what they eventually fall on, but they're also like, it also may have been a stroke on top of that. At this point, they're all so convinced that Richard was their guy that Corey thought they were never going to find Elizabeth. He thought they were going to never get answers. And he said he felt so much emotional investment in this case that even though he was feeling this way, you know, when he would talk to the smarts, he said, I still told them, you know, don't give up hope. And he's like, but really, he felt like this was a permanent dead end almost. He was really scared of that being the reality. But the Smart family was not thinking that way at all. They're like, no. This just means we can finally turn our attention elsewhere. And Ed then talks about how one day on a Sunday afternoon, him and Lois were going through letters because they were getting tons of letters of support during all of this. He takes a nap and he's talking about this dream he had because he just talks about this whole time. He just knew in his heart that Elizabeth was still out there. And it's just like this really beautiful dream of them being like reunited and everyone being so happy and everything like that. And he just said that this was a sign for him that they just couldn't give up. Even though Richard was dead, they had to keep going. It wasn't Richard. She was still out there. Then we kind of make a little bit of a shift and we start getting this conversation with a different individual about the counterculture to the Mormon culture that exists in Utah. And we meet this man named Jared Parkinson. And he talks about how, especially in the early 2000s, there was a lot of these like underground parties. There was a lot of house parties, and all of these had a lot of alcohol, weed, mushroom tea, acid, all the party favors.
That was the surprising one for me, was the acid. I was like, oh.
Like, we escalating.
I get the weed, but I was like, they were like, and he's like, and acid. And I was like, oh, so we just jumped hardcore in. Okay, let's go.
Literally. And he talks about how one night at a party, 3 people came in. It was a man and 2 ladies. He said they were dressed in full white and the ladies had, quote, full face scarves that only showed their eyes. And he says he remembers that the younger lady had bluish gray eyes. And then we cut, of course, to MK, and she's talking about how after the kidnapping, it was really hard to go to sleep. Understandable. And she says that while she was waiting for her dad to tuck her in, she would read books or try to rack her brain about who took Elizabeth. And one night she was flipping through the Guinness World Records, and then randomly a name pops into her head and she immediately knew who it was that took Elizabeth. But we don't get to find out yet.
I know. I was like, what's the name? MK, tell me.
I'm like, say it. No, not yet. So back to Jared, and he's talking about it wasn't unusual to see people dressed how these three were, the two women and the man, because he said so many people in this crowd were using self-expression for their fashion, religion, etc. So he just treated them like anybody else, right? Why would you think otherwise? And he offers them a drink, and the guy says, quote, "I can have a drink, but the ladies can't." And Jared said he sat there and talked with them, and there's even a photo of the younger woman sitting next to Jared and that man talking. And Jared, when asked about the man, he says that he had a, quote, "an energy of authority, delusions of grandeur." And he said that he turned to the younger lady and he literally said to her, quote, "What are you doing? This gentleman you came with seems a little controlling." And then the older lady interrupted him and said, "You can't really talk to her." And Jared said she was really curt. And he's like, "Okay, weirdos." And then just kind of like drifted off being like, "I ain't getting in the middle of that," and just kind of went on about his night without giving it another thought. Which it's like, okay, got it. You're like, okay, you're giving me weird vibes. I'm a dip. But no spoiler, you guys can guess that young woman is Elizabeth. And we do get to hear from Elizabeth. We get to hear from her a lot. She's going to take us back to the night she was kidnapped. But that is going to be where we stop things for today. If you guys have not watched this, highly, highly recommend. Again, it is on Netflix. And be sure to tune in next Thursday for part 2, where we are going to hear everything from Elizabeth's side and how all of that plays out leading to her rescue. She is truly an incredible person. I cannot put enough emphasis on that, but she really, really is. But we will leave that for next time. So with that, we're going to go ahead and sign off, and we will see you back here on Sunday for another Sunday Scaries. Bye, guys.
Toodles.